Preparing to live stream. Oh, let me unmute you, Natasha. I have it set so no one can unmute themselves.
No, you're good. Hello.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good.
Oh, wow.
At some point, we'll have real people joining.
Sorry,
Just
I
us
missed
for now,
the prep call.
unless W. Thompson is not the W. Thompson we think it is.
Oh my god. Did I miss anything crazy in the prep call?
No, I don't think so.
No. I mean, the only prep was basically I kind of talked Danny through Sophie's last two columns. I know that's really prep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I just was viewing them when I was eating my lunch too, so.
All right, you've also prepped.
Yes, in the way
right.
that yes, to my extent.
Okay. Sophie, I mean, has anyone touched base with Sophie today as far as this here conference call?
But Sophie's here. That's what I say.
Oh, I don't see the. Oh, I'm in the wrong view. No, I only see 4 of us.
There's only 4 of us right now.
Okay, yeah. So Sophie has not joined yet. So that's what I was getting at.
Chris, does my audio sound okay? I'm not using my mic.
Does sound okay.
Okay.
Yeah, good enough for this Zoom thing.
Perfect. Hey, Sophie.
Oh, shit, did I screw up my sound again? Hi, Sophie.
Oh,
I see.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Oh. Yes.
Great. Is the lighting sufficient?
Yeah, I think it's great.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
I got you.
Awesome. How are you guys?
Doing good.
Good.
How are you?
I'm good. There's always a new challenge and opportunity, so yay.
Exactly.
Well said.
Yeah. Oh my god. Danny, you look so official. Is that your house?
Oh, is this like, so the live stream is open in public?
Yeah, did you open on the YouTube publicly? Did you not want it that way?
We can do whatever we want.
I'm not sure that we can stream it and have it be private. I don't know how to do that.
Open to the public. Also, I will say, because I've never live streamed on YouTube before. There's a delay.
There should, I think a slight
like
delay.
There's like a bleeping delay on there.
Oh.
Because I see some questions, but I can't really read them at the same time. And also
where are the questions? Danny, where are you looking at the questions?
If you you see on Zoom, you see where it says live on YouTube?
Yeah.
If you click on that, there's a view stream on YouTube. And then
I see you.
I'm going to turn off myself on YouTube, but then you can see people. Look, we have 5 people.
Oh, cool.
Thanks, Juan. You're there.
It is weird to put a face on the voice.
So there you go. Talk about something completely new here.
Cool.
For what it's worth, I don't have any of that visibility, so
I'll ask the questions.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and like I said, we'll live stream, and then we post some of the stuff onto the internet. So it's mostly moderated from us, and people kind of pop in, pop out. Most of them will do chats here. Let me make sure we have a tweet going out.
Okay.
Is Anna in this? Walter, do you have tweet access?
Sophie, it's nice to meet you over Zoom.
It's really nice to meet you too, Natasha. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, I covered startups at my old job a little bit, and immigration, the intersection between them. Ooh. So it's super near and dear to my heart. So I've been reading your stuff as well, but it's really helpful, and I know people appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here and really appreciate the opportunity. And it's always so great to meet people from TechCrunch because you're all outstanding. So yeah, it's super fun for me. Cool.
Oh, thanks. I am the newest member, so I don't know if I can take the credit for the outstanding history, but I will prove it.
Well, I'm sure you had to meet some standards to get in. So.
Yes, that's so true.
There's actually a sign that says, "You must be as tall as my hand."
Yeah, exactly. We prefer to go with just the a lottery for all applications.
Oh, good.
It's like the old line about recruiting. You know, the first thing you do is you take half the applications and throw them away because you don't hire unlucky people.
Oh my God.
That sounds vaguely libertarian.
Whoa.
Yeah.
From Nepal joining us. That's pretty cool. Welcome from Nepal.
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah, it lives on. You know, you never know how we had a couple dozen people last time, and we'll see what happens today. There's so much news, though. I feel like we weren't competing with such a news cycle last week.
Oh yeah.
Today is just incredibly crazy.
A lot of news.
I closed the live stream, so let me see what's going on over there. This is the most exciting live stream conference you've ever seen in your life. We will get started about 1 minute officially.
Okay.
Started, but yeah, we have people from Kathmandu and elsewhere, and hopefully we'll have some folks from the ExtraCrunch side.
Nice.
Natasha, you ready? Were you on our last call? You were just sort of in the background, though.
Yeah.
You
I was listening to see how you guys do it, but
we've upgraded you to video. We paid
Woo.
the extra $10 a month for video access there.
But yeah, I'm ready, excited. Should I be recording anything, Chris?
Chris, I think, has it for us.
All right, cool.
Yeah, I got it. I'm
Cool,
recording.
Just paranoid.
So slightly different than podcasting. If we were
Yeah.
podcasting, yes, you
Okay.
should be recording.
Cool.
But we are not, so
Cool.
you're good.
And we have our first folks joining, and joining right on time. That's incredible. Like I've never joined. I was on a call earlier with a CEO who never showed up after 15 minutes. So that's how my day has gone. But we'll get started in like 20 seconds. And Sophie, thank you so much for writing all the columns. They've been super interesting.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. I have so much more that I want to say. It's really hard to limit it to once a week because everything's changing so fast. So it's like, okay, what's the most important thing?
No, exactly. No, I mean, it's just unbelievable how much stuff is changing. I mean, it's changing by the day. I mean, taxes, they always say that, there's only two things in life, like death and taxes. And now it's not even taxes anymore. Taxes are now 3 months out.
Well, we got death covered.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Sorry.
That's our best line of the night. Okay, thanks everyone. That was a great conference call. 30 seconds. Well, on that note, why don't we
on that positive note,
so we can get to the content here in a moment here. But I'm super excited. I'm Danny Crane, one of the managing editors here at TechCrunch. Also here with Natasha Mascarenas, who is coming in from San Francisco. Natasha, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Happy to be here. How are you?
We're surviving out here in Brooklyn. There are lines for the grocery stores. It's like a Soviet era time in which people are given ration tickets in order to buy, organic kale. But I'm super excited to introduce our guest and longtime ExtraCrunch guest columnist and supporter, Sophie Alcorn of Alcorn Immigration Law. Sophie, you're based out in San Francisco, is that correct?
That's right, Danny. I'm in Mountain View in Silicon Valley, so I was often in the city.
And just for introduction's sake, why don't you talk a little bit about your law practice and what you focus on?
Thank you so much. So I'm a certified specialist in U.S. immigration and nationality law as recognized by the State Bar of California. I'm a second generation immigration lawyer. My dad practiced immigration law, and my mom is an immigrant from Germany. I started my law firm, Alcorn Immigration Law, here in the San Francisco Bay Area about 4.5, 5 years ago. And I'm super proud of the growth. We recently won an award for fastest growing woman-owned business in the Pacific region of the United States. And I was recently named a top 10 immigration attorney in California. So
oh, wow, congratulations.
Thank you. It's been an amazing adventure. And our primary focus is to support technology professionals from around the world who want to find ways to live and work legally in the United States and build companies here.
Phenomenal. And I believe the last time we've met in person was in Berlin, which
That's right.
both seem so recent and far away and impossible to believe we actually were in a different country at some point. But why don't we just start from the most general point of view? Like, what does immigration look like from your point of view? Like, what are the questions you're getting? What's changing? Like, what's sort of the state of art right now?
Yeah, there are a lot of changes going on right now. The biggest thing is that we're all stuck in our homes and people can't really travel. So that's a fundamental part of immigration. So it's just funny because the whole system and compliance still matters, and there's a lot of opportunity that people can seize. It's just kind of ironic and humorous that we're all, stuck at home thinking about it. But there have been, several notable changes. One of the biggest being that if you've been in India or China or Europe or the UK within the last 14 days, you're no longer permitted entry into the United States. The US-Canada border is restricted. The US-Mexico border is restricted. And so, mobility really isn't happening right now, obviously. But there are a ton of people living and working in the United States who are immigrants, and they still need to make sure that they're maintaining their immigration status, whether they're on H-1B, students, or various other processes. And there are still companies who need to hire people from around the world, and there's still people around the world who are stuck at home looking outside wishing that they could be sheltering in place in California or somewhere else in the US and strategizing long term about how to make it here eventually.
And
go Natasha.
Yeah, I want to jump in on the hiring point. I was wondering how you feel like hiring for immigrant workers will be in the wake of this pandemic and the lack of travel. So yeah, if you could just cash in on that.
Yeah, well, it's going to shift. I think there's a lot of changes going on, but at least in the startup world, I think early stage startups, especially in software and biotech, are still going to get funded. And they really need international engineers and scientists to help grow those companies. So immigration is still going to be a large part of it. I think it's just, shifting around between different industries potentially, but it's still going to be there.
So obviously, we're coming up to one of the most important dates, I guess, in the immigration calendar, which is the H-1B sort of lottery, which is coming up, I guess, in a couple of weeks. I don't think they've delayed specifically the lottery itself.
Right.
So obviously, there's always a huge amount of consideration. I believe the number is around, 65,000 or so, H-1B cap. And but there have been some serious changes. So I guess the premium processing has changed recently. You can talk about a little bit about what that means for a lot of folks.
So there's several changes. Some of them are, and I was going to say some of them are related to COVID, but actually just the H-1B system in general has been in flux this whole year so far. And it seems like they're trying really hard to keep everything going. USCIS is the agency that deals with this, and they have currently closed all of their public-facing offices. So if you had a green card interview or citizenship interview scheduled, those are all being canceled. But they also operate out of these service centers in a couple different states where a lot of workers are deciding petitions and applications. And it seems to be that those are still open, and that they're going ahead with the lottery. And the way they changed it was, historically, it was all paper-based, and April 1st was the start date, and physical paper-based petitions could be received within the first 5 business days of April. and about 200,000 people applied for 65,000 slots for people from anywhere in the world, plus about 20,000 for people with US advanced degrees. So it took the government like 3 months just to return 100-page petitions from 120,000 people who didn't get selected. So they cut all of that out this year, and they seem to have pulled off this electronic registration process. The window was open from March 1st to March 20th. So all the companies had to make profiles and put in all the names of their candidates. And now in about a week, we're anticipating that the government should announce all of the people who were selected. Everybody else is going to be probably put on just a wait list so that there won't be outright rejections. You'll just be in line if there's another slot that becomes available from somebody else who didn't follow through or got denied. And they did announce that premium processing is going to be suspended. And that's been a typical tactic every year where petitions in the lottery don't get access to premium processing. They're targeting an October 1st start date at the earliest for all of these new hires. So the government kind of says, you know, we're not going to do it in 2 weeks, just let us get through this big push. Later, we might make it available so you can turn it on for anybody who you're still waiting for. So that happened, and that was kind of predictable. But then the other component is that they also canceled premium processing in general for everybody. So it's still applicable to cases that were filed last week, but for any new cases that are being filed this week, whether it's an I-129 like non-immigrant visa petition for like an O visa for extraordinary ability or an H-1B, no more premium processing for those, and no more premium processing for I-140s, which is a green card petition. So things are slowing down, and they're pretty opaque. So I don't know if the workers at these service centers are able to work from home or how they're managing it, but they still have a high volume of petitions and applications that they need to process, and they have reduced capacity to do it. That much is clear.
And so for a lot of people, you know, going through this process or even considering going into the United States, you know, what's sort of the message to them? Is it, hey, you know, now is a really tough time to kind of go through this process. You know, maybe it's best to just even wait, right? Versus getting an adverse decision or just being held in limbo for a couple of years, or is now the right time because, gee, you know, you might as well get it in because those delays are just going to add up longer and longer and longer.
So we're already in the crazy situation for example, Indian people in line for green cards. If you're so brilliant that you have a PhD, there's such high demand that the wait time for that category could somehow be 150 years for a green card. So unless the law changes, there's a lot of people whose turn in line will just never come. But that's on the green card side. There is not a quota-based system for non-immigrant visas to get here. And so I think there's a couple categories of people who can actually really benefit from this time we all have at home right now, namely serial entrepreneurs and founders who want to bring their companies to the US for US market access or start new startups here in the future. Basically, O visas for extraordinary ability, EB-1A green cards for extraordinary ability, and EB-2 national interest waiver green cards for people who are going to help the United States. Those take a lot of work for our clients to do. It's like figuring out your professors from 10 years ago and if they'll write letters of recommendation for you, finding all of the startup pitch competitions you were asked to judge, finding all of the newspaper articles about you. So if you don't have to commute, if you're home anyway, you know, why not invest in your dreams and your future and use this time to like gather your portfolio of accomplishments so that you can harness that and take control of your destiny basically in the future. I also think that whenever we come out on the other side of this, there's just going to be a huge surge of applications. So I would say, you know, if you're definitely going to do it now because you want to get out ahead of that bulge kind of in the pipeline that's going to come through.
And Sophie, I just had a quick follow-up.
Yeah.
I was reading a story done by my former colleague at the Chronicle about how over time this crackdown on immigration has led to, less excitement on the golden ticket that is living in the United States. And I was wondering, in your inbox from your clients, are you hearing people no longer interested in coming here, just as these events continue to spiral?
It's sort of, okay, so the answer is no. It's just sort of weeding out who's serious and who is not serious. I think there's still a ton of people who want to live their lives in a different place than they've grown up. I would say the US could do a lot better job of competing with countries like Canada or Australia for startups, that are going to create jobs in the economy. Like, we could actually make it easier for people to come here if we wanted to spur economic growth. There's a lot of things we could do that other countries are doing. But there's just a lot of people whose dream it is to come here. And so now it seems that it's sort of polarizing. They're more committed than ever because now it's very clear to them that they want to lead a different life than the one they're living right now.
And Sophie, when we ask you, I mean, some of the requirements in the visa, process require you to leave the country and, pick up the visa or go through some sort of processing in a home country in order to move forward. Has there been any changes in that front now that travel has been restricted internationally?
Yeah, well, you can't leave.
Yeah.
And it's not just the US, right? Like, every country around the world is listing its own different requirements for who they're going to let in or not. And you can probably go back to the country you're a citizen of, but maybe not. Like, they might prevent you. So tell me your question again. Imagining all the people stuck in the country.
No, curious, because in some of those processes, like H-1Bs, you have to actually go home. You have to actually pick it up from the local consulate or embassy. Like, now that there's no international travel on the airlines or whatnot, how is that?
So this is really important for the round of H-1Bs that is going to be filed for anybody who's currently in the United States on another status like F1 OPT. Or STEM OPT or any other type of visa. You should really, at this point, with the way the global outlook is appearing, don't choose consular processing, because I don't know if you can leave, and if you can leave, I don't know if you can get back, and all of the embassies and consulates are closed right now unless there's an actual emergency need for a visa, which they're being very, very strict about. So to make that easier, because sometimes people may have gone out of status by like a week or something, and they were planning on going back home to just cure it, get a new visa, and come back in. But you can't really do that anymore. So you're technically out of status, and you could be accruing what's called unlawful presence, which is very bad, because if you have more than 6 months accrued and you leave, you can't come back in for 3 years. If you've accrued more than a year and you leave, you can't come back for 10 years. So it's very harsh. But there is a temporary forgiveness measure that USCIS has created. It's called special situations. So because this is basically like a flood or a fire or some other natural disaster, if you have somehow missed a deadline because of COVID, you get a lawyer to help you explain it, but you may be able to request an extension or something within the United States without leaving when you otherwise would have needed to get consular processing.
Got it. And then when you think about some of the questions you're getting from your own clients, I mean, what's on people's minds today? Like, what are the big concerns? Is it just, hey, there's going to be these changes? Is it, other things? Is it even COVID related at all? I mean, what's sort of top of mind for a lot of folks these days?
Yeah, well, it seems like a lot of people want to get married because, I don't know, but maybe there's going to be a lot of babies in 9 months.
Post-spring,
But the problem is that like city halls and county registrars are closed. So if you don't already have a marriage license, you might not be able to get one. If you do have a marriage license, you could always get somebody registered through like Universal Life Church to conduct the marriage for you. So just the practical logistics of getting married in a government shutdown is really interesting. Many companies are still, very gung-ho about visas for founders and hypercritical people who, they have a job opening and it's like just for this one person and they really need this person in their organization. There was a lot of demand for the H-1B lottery. But, people were also freaking out last week with all the shutdowns and are you an essential business and do you have to work from home and how do you manage it? So we were really like herding cats to try to get all of the electronic registrations done last week. And I think there's also just kind of a pause, everybody's just taking a moment to reflect and figure out, okay, what does this mean for my business? What new opportunities do I see? Do I need to pivot something? And we also just don't know how long we're really going to be home, right? So, but it seems like as good a time as any to dive in, basically.
Are you hearing anything about how your clients are feeling about like impending layoffs? I feel like we've been seeing a number of those recently, and just any advice you have for people worried about layoffs and employers that are thinking about layoffs as well.
Yeah, so layoffs can interfere with your future ability to sponsor a green card or get immigration benefits for somebody. So if it's a permanent layoff, consider, like, if you know that you want to hire people or start green cards for people in a few months, maybe look for some alternative options besides layoffs. I think there's like a new tax incentive family medical leave opportunity that might be available now, and we'll see what's in the stimulus package and other legislation that's coming out. But if there's any way to like not actually lay them off, that could be beneficial. For people who do get laid off, there's a 60-day grace period after the cessation of employment during which you're allowed to remain in the United States. And you can always use that time to look for another job to hire you. And they need to just file the H-1B petition by the 60th day so that USCIS receives it. But without premium processing, there's no way that you'll get a decision within that 60-day window. But it is okay, if you're already an H-1B, it is okay to start working at the new company once USCIS receives the petition. And if you need more time, you could also apply for a change of status to maybe like a visitor status. And that's a way to get another 6 months. During that time, you could continue your job search, but you wouldn't be able to start working until that H-1B is approved. If you go to become like a B visitor, then you would no longer be an H-1B status. So you'd have to wait for a new H-1B approval to start again.
Wow.
And let me ask you, obviously there's so much remote work going on. I mean, how does remote work and work from home affect immigration? Does it at all? And if it does, like, how does it change some of the rules for USCIS?
So interestingly, we've actually requested several visas for people to work from home just because that's the way the company wants to do things. A lot of startups, like I have one client that doesn't have an office, and instead of having offsites, they have monthly on-sites where everybody from everywhere meets in like a hotel once a month for a week. And so they just
sounds like the most Silicon Valley thing ever.
It is.
Monthly
and
on-sites.
They want everybody to be within a 2-hour flight of San Francisco, basically. So if the candidate wants to work in Denver, go for it, So that's what we put on the petition. We've also done several H-1Bs for people to work from home. It's just interesting because for the H-1Bs, there's this notice requirement where you have to post a document in the office or make it available to everybody in the workforce called an LCA, a labor condition application. And you're supposed to post it in the work site. So if the work site's at home, you're technically allowed to post it at home, but then are you really giving anybody notice if it's just the person whose job it is? So electronic posting is becoming a thing because that's allowed and that's very effective. And The other thing about all of that is if somebody's on an H-1B and their house is outside of the metropolitan statistical area, like outside of commuting distance of where their office was, there might be another wage that you are required to pay them in that location. So if it's higher, you may have to actually like amend the H-1B and pay the person more. So it's just very technical and good to really like look at the old H-1B with a fine-tooth comb and compare it to the person's work location now. And then the one other thing to consider about all of that is that this is less applicable with like coding jobs, but if somebody had a very physical hands-on job, like maybe a scientist working in a laboratory and they're working from home now, but they have totally different job duties, that could also require an amendment regardless of what type of visa status that they're on, because it's a materially different job.
God, and there hasn't been sort of a, hey, remote work is now a thing, because of everything going on that like, you don't have to apply right now to fill this sort of stuff out. Like it's still fully enforced and there's no rule changes.
I mean, there's no like COVID blessing grace period that is curing every immigration problem that people have. We still have to comply. I guess if there's ever an audit later, this is probably a good excuse, but we still want to show that like you tried your best to follow the rules. You took all the measures possible. And it's just because this, I mean, obviously we want to do the right thing, but it's also because the stakes are so high, because if the person's immigration status gets messed up, then it's not just like a fine that we're talking about, it's somebody's ability to actually like live in America, and they might.
So I want to ask, and of course we're open to anyone who's in the room, but Brittany here has a question about specifically the Tian application, which has always been, in my view, the strangest visa in the sense that you just kind of walk up to a border and you're like, hey, I do this thing at a tech company, let me in, and the border officer sort of makes a determination right there. But what does the Tian application process look like for Canadian nationals? And I think Mexico is also part of that,
right?
Where you can't go to the border anymore. The borders are closed. Like, what do you do in that sort of situation?
Okay, so you probably can't come in unless somehow the business that you're conducting is essential. Let's just take it from the HR perspective. If the candidate is already, if the candidate's in Canada, good luck. Maybe if they're essential, we can find a way for them to do this at an airport and then come in. But I don't know if they'll be allowed in. That's Canada. In Mexico, Mexico doesn't have the same privilege that Canada has. Canadians basically don't need visas to come in. Mexican citizens do need visas, and all of the consulates are closed, so nobody's getting a visa right now. Now, if somebody's currently in the United States, like you're hiring somebody who's going to graduate from with their bachelor's in finance for like an accounting role or something, and you're looking at onboarding them in May, you can request a change of status for them within the United States through USCIS. Can't get premium processing. It'll probably take 2 to 3 months. Best to apply now, and you can request like a May 25th start date, and maybe it'll be approved by then, maybe it won't be, but at least you'll start the clock for that application process.
So there's no, would that be for like an H-1B, or is that include like a TN style visa or one of the treaty visas?
That's like a TN. An H-1B is a lot more complicated because there's this whole like LCA and posting process. So it can easily take a month just to get ready to file an H-1B. And then the government processing times for H-1Bs without premium processing are more like 7.5 to 9.5 months. So probably, just for people who are currently on H-1B and can transfer easily, those would be the new hires to look at right now for H-1Bs.
Got it. And so specifically for Canadians, if they're in the United States now, either graduating or maybe they're switching jobs or something like that, they can go through a change of status sort of approach to stay in the country and work at their next job or their first job.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Got it. Great. Hopefully, Brittany, that covered your question. If you have more, feel free to ask them. Tosh, do you have any other questions here?
Yes. So from the YouTube live stream, someone asked if there was kind of a job board of sorts for companies that are hiring immigrant entrepreneurs and tech workers at this time. And kind of to broaden that question out as well, are there any resources you're seeing online broadly that would help resource during this time? I'm sure your column is one of them, but also beyond that.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm seeing a lot of posts on LinkedIn about companies that are hiring. There's also some data analytics companies that work with human resources to drive like data on national hiring trends, although that's not public. What I would do if this were me, there's a website that you can Google. Basically, somebody did a bunch of freedom of information requests to figure out which companies were getting LCAs and PERMs from the Department of Labor to sponsor immigrants. And so there's a database that ranks the companies by like the number of people they sponsor. So I would like cross-reference that database with like biotech companies and software companies and companies where I see growth happening right now, and then look for jobs in that intersection. But that could be a great little startup or internet project to build that would help a lot of people. And then the other resource I just want to mention is that I recently launched my podcast. It's called Immigration Law for Tech Startups, and you can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, and we go into this in a lot of depth every week.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Let me ask, spanning forward, looking at a year or two, obviously we don't know how coronavirus is going to go in the next couple of months. And so there's a huge open question, but are there sort of longer term effects on the immigration system and some of these processes that you're already starting to see?
Well, one possible effect is that companies could, if there's a recession, pull out of green card sponsorship, which might decrease the wait times for the Chinese and Indian people who, might have to wait decades for their spot in line. Whenever, if hopefully this will just all turn around really quickly. If there is a recession, there's always like an immigration backlash component to that, where people are rallying and saying, we don't need more immigration, jobs for America. Maybe that could happen. I did see that there might be some provisions in the stimulus bill to potentially protect international students or H-1Bs. Some of those were being debated. I don't know if they're making it in or not. But, from I mentioned this before, but from a perspective of triggering economic growth, startups are great. More than half of the unicorn startups were founded by immigrants. And if anything, that's the way to seed new industries. So if anything, I hope that we finally get a startup visa. That would be huge.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we were talking in Berlin in December, which hard to believe. I believe the panel was called how to grow your startup globally, which is like 500 levels of irony at this point. Was because we had our friend from Jabatical and some of these startups where it's the whole company and its workforce and the labor market was everyone's on planes going everywhere.
Right.
Which who would have thought sitting in, the arena in Berlin that all this would kind of get canceled. But, that's, I think the times that we're in is that there is a huge amount of change coming. Obviously, I think immigration is a huge topic of consideration, and particularly as soon as we get through this kind of fiscal stimulus conversation.
Yeah.
There's a huge challenge of a lot of universities with international students, particularly from China, Korea, and India, but also around the world of, what happens if some of these schools close? What happens if, their online learning? How does that affect student visas? I believe in some cases, online learning is different or is somehow considered differently than folks who are in person physically on campus. Residential. So there's a lot of open questions there.
Yeah, ICE did just release guidance an hour ago with protections for international students, so that it's going to be easier to maintain your F1 status. If you're doing remote learning inside the US or outside the US, you can still maintain your F1 visa right now. So that was good. The other thing I just wanted to mention is this is like it's like a forcing function. It helps us realize like, this is great. Like we're using Zoom and this is fantastic. But it also leads me to realize, you know, as an entrepreneur and a business owner, there are definitely times when I wish I could be with my colleagues in person. There's certain discussions, there's certain qualities of conversation that just do happen better in person. So I love what this is doing for the environment. I think it's wonderful. And it'll help us be more judicious about the times when we do, you know, want people to move and travel in the future.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to see you live again soon. I mean, I think we were expecting you at Disrupt SF. Hopefully that is still on. We'll see what happens in the next couple of months. But Sophie Alcorn of Alcorn Law, that's www.alcorn.law, as well as the Dear Sophie column on ExtraCrunch. Thank you so much for joining us. Super appreciate it.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Natasha. I really appreciate it. Take care, you guys.
Thank you.
You too. Bye.